Steven, do you think amputation is worth it to attend a NFL playoff game?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. No, that just to play it straight up. Yeah. If I was a Chiefs fan, wanted to watch the Dolphins, maybe not in a wild card game though. That's a little much.
I mean, yeah. I mean, from what you've seen from that franchise over the last couple of years, I guess that's kind of low on the totem pole. But I mean, to say that you were at one of the coldest games in NFL history is pretty awesome, especially when you see all the photos of people just getting beers from a fridge and then automatically freezing instantly. But if you don't know the story, apparently multiple people that attended that game that took their gloves off for like maybe 5 minutes are still experiencing, I guess, frostbite and have been
Yeah.
advised by doctors to amputate their fingers. Pull a full Ronnie Lott.
Yeah. Yeah. Not worth it if it's a wild card game, but shoot, it's a cool story. And so what? I mean, I could miss like I don't need my right ring finger, Gonna need the
That
left one. Gonna
that
need
that
the
is the
left.
most that is the most useless digit.
Yeah. I don't need the right ring finger. So I'm willing to sacrifice that if it means going to a game. Although the game wasn't that great,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I don't know if that would be worth it. I mean, like you think about it in Ronnie Lott terms, he was playing at a regular season game, and they
Mm.
told him, "You broke your hand. If we can cut the tip off, and you can keep playing, or you can be out the rest of the season." He was like, "I've already won a few Super Bowls already, so yeah, let's cut that tip off." You're like, Jesus, Ronnie.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Chiefs fans, I don't know. I mean, like you're never going to experience that in a Super Bowl. It's not going to be that cold for a Super Bowl game, so you never would do that. But I don't know. I don't. The coldest game I think I've ever been to was this is going to be sad. Well, the coldest game I've ever been to in Oakland was Charles Woodson's last game as a Raider, and that was low 40s.
Was it that bad?
It was pretty cold on Christmas Eve.
I was there. I don't remember it being that bad.
Okay,
I
do
don't
you
know.
remember when?
I
Do
had
you
a
remember when
lot to
you?
drink. I had a lot to drink that game. So there's
Yes,
no form of weather that would have made me cool down
that is
based off
true.
of the 30 beers that I had that day.
Okay. I should say the coldest game I've ever been to was at Arrowhead. I went to go see the Raiders and Chiefs play in an overtime game in 2011 with Kyle Orton at quarterback. You may remember it was the game that was going to give the Raiders life
Yeah.
to make the playoffs, and then they lost to the Chargers the following week, and Tebow got in. I hate talking about it.
Right.
But okay, what about when we went to the last? Well, we thought it was going to be the last game in Oakland in 2018. John Gruden's first year. It was torrential downpour. It was cold. I
Yeah.
think I experienced hypothermia. Can't say I did or not, but I was
No,
pretty cold the next day.
you did. You did. You did.
I was soaked. My jeans were soaked, and we were sitting in the cold for. But it was experience. I'm not. That was not a wasted opportunity. I will remember that for the rest of my life.
I get there, and you and Elena are just drenched, and there's nothing like. Okay, I was a Boy Scout for like 3 years. All right, so I know what I'm talking about. When we would go winter camping, they would tell you specifically, do not wear jeans because jeans are the hardest clothes to dry because they're full on cotton. And when I saw you dripping and your jeans looked like leather pants, I knew you were in trouble. But
Yeah.
you got through it. You managed to get through it. By the way, at winter camping, I got hypothermia once. It was awful, and frostbite. I slept for like 12 hours the next day. I think, I guess the next level of this conversation here, when we're talking about amputated body parts, like what sporting event would you go back and watch live if you could go back in time and watch any sporting event live? If that meant you had to give up one of your fingers, which one would that be?
Ooh, God,
It's a good one, right?
it's a hell of a question.
Yeah. You can ask that with Kolsky at 11:30. That's going to be the first thing.
Yes, just your opinion, man. Stephen Langford, Derek Papa, Matt Kolsky could have joined us today at 11:30 because we want to talk to him about what game he would go to back in time to cut off a digit, and we'll talk to him about the Bears quarterback situation and a lot of other stuff. I don't know, Stephen. I mean, I don't know if game I want to see live in person that I would cut off a finger for.
There's no sporting event where you'd watch the entire thing and you'd lose if they meant you lose your finger. Like there's nothing you'd go back and watch.
I don't know, man. I like having fingers.
So
I don't
there's
know.
no
I don't know
sporting
if
event you'd sacrifice your finger for. All right.
I think so. I don't think so.
Mm.
What about you?
Uh, I think if I had to choose one, it would have been England versus Greece in the World Cup. I want to say it was the group stage.
You would say some soccer shit.
Where David Beckham needed to get the free kick in order for them to win, just to be around that. I would have absolutely been there. Or when Chelsea upset Barcelona in 2012 in the Champions League, I would have done that.
Okay, I don't care about the details of the game. Give me details on the hand. Which hand, which digit?
I told you already. I'd sacrifice the right ring
Oh, right
finger.
hand. Okay.
Yeah, right ring finger. I'd be good with that.
Not your
Then,
left?
not my left, because no, what the hell? I'm gonna have a wedding ring on this thing.
Oh, that's true.
Don't want to cut off. What do you think? I'm just gonna put a ring on my middle finger. Need the middle finger, obviously.
Well, you could wear it around your neck like some Lord of the Rings shit.
Okay, that's fair. But right index is where I'd go, and I'd cut it if I could see those two moments, because there's no crowd that's as crazy as a soccer stadium filled with hooligans.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you
I'd go
might
back to
lose
that.
you might lose a finger regardless of just
Yeah.
attending the game.
Yeah. Yeah, just someone bit it off because they just watched their team lose, or because I just watched that Curb Your Enthusiasm episode with Bill Buckner from the 8th season. Maybe I'd go back to watch that game with the Mets and the Reds back in 1986, Game 6
is
of the World
iconic.
Series. So
is
maybe
iconic.
I'd sacrifice a finger for that if I could go watch that.
Yeah, I don't know if any game worth seeing live is worth losing a digit over, but I guess I'm not
Well, I'm
just built
glad
for
you
that.
really played into the question, Derek. I'm glad you're
I don't know,
really
man.
taking
I
it
mean,
seriously.
I think it's crazy that Chiefs fans would be willing to do that. Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a huge risk. I think the coldest Raider game I went to was against the Chiefs, but that's because the friend that I went with, shout out to Tyler, he had season tickets in section 306, I want to say, which was right at the end zone, south side of the stadium. And we were kind of sitting at the top. It was raining. We had ponchos on, and I just remember it being so cold that when I tried to push the door handle in, because his dad was driving a PT Cruiser, when I had to push the door handle in with my thumb, I couldn't feel my thumb. So
That's cold.
I'll always remember that as the coldest game.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you went to Oakland for Raider Chiefs games, it usually was raining. Every Chief Raider game I think of, it's always raining.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Yeah. Global warming, man.
Yeah, no, crazy.
Crazy thing.
Yeah, we'll see if it's even a thing. The fuckery's afoot, man. Things are happening. Kinda.
So you didn't take my advice then?
Which was?
You haven't laid down any cement. You haven't, gotten scuba certified.
Oh,
maybe gone
believe
out.
me, sir. Believe me, sir. Believe me, sir. No,
we did a whole. I really thought that through, Derek. We did a half hour. I did.
And
I
I'm
half
going to
hour
do
of what you could do.
And I'm going to do most of those things. I'm going to do most of those things. Yes. Just not now. This is when news is actually happening. I talk about like the dog days of summer where it's like, oh man, trying to think of just some obscure running back.
In that dead period between
we're like,
May and August,
we're like,
when you got nothing going on.
Exactly. Where it's just like, oh, there's no basketball, and now it's like, oh, I'm waiting on, Gardner Minshew to sign. It's like I got better things to do. I'll lay some cement. That's when I'll take those things up. But we
That's
had actual
it's a
news,
good
Steven.
point. It's a little cold. It's a little cold to do the things that I suggested that you do.
Yeah, scuba diving that'll be pulled on hold for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't watch that Netflix show.
Which one? Oh, Strive to Survive.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, you got a lot of interesting shit happening with Formula One right now, man. It's getting dramatic, even though there's nothing like, not with the sport. We're talking about off the track.
Yeah.
I was about to say off the ice or off the field or off the court. No, off the track. You got some drama happening with a lot of these teams and Red Bull and stuff. It's kind of weird.
Sponsorships?
No, it's Red Bull is one of the racing teams. It's like the premier team in Formula One right now, and their team principal named Christian Horner, who is married to Ginger Spice, got accused of harassment from someone who worked at Red Bull. Then the WhatsApp messages leaked where he's kind of hitting on her. At least it looked like they were the WhatsApp messages. I don't know if they were made up or AI generated or whatever. then that accuser, she ended up getting fired, let go, dismissed yesterday. So a lot going on, and apparently it was someone within Red Bull who leaked those WhatsApp messages. It's a lot happening right now.
Sounds like they have an idea for a new commercial, though. It's like that guy getting accused of all that stuff, and he's like, "Uh-oh, Red Bull gives you wings." It just flies away.
Flies away.
Yeah, exactly.
Lawsuits give you wings.
We will get to all the fuckery stuff going on because it's starting Monday, man. Tampering. We're tampering on Monday.
Yeah.
Get excited.
I got a question.
Well, okay, go ahead. I was going to bring something up.
Before we get into it, because you bring up the word tampering, why is Matthew Judon allowed to go on Good Morning Football and make his pledge or speech or whatever to get people to join the Patriots?
He always does that. Well, he always does that on Twitter. He always goes after people. Players can do that. Teams can't.
So players can recruit, but the actual teams can't do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Speaking of which, Good Morning Football not going to be around for much longer, I guess. Or will be, but it's moving to L.A.
Yeah, it's moving to Los Angeles.
Kind of weird, though. I mean, the NFL was all that was going to be like, their big show, and it was for the longest time. And I guess they're just, it's weird. I wonder how much programming NFL Network will be doing in the future because they have a NFL and ESPN furthered their relationship, and I don't know what that means for live sporting events or live programming. But yeah, I'm glad I left NFL Network because a lot of people losing jobs.
Ooh, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you got out at the good time, but
I did.
I don't know. So I'm totally wrong. I thought that was a thing. I thought illegal tampering would be a player going on a national.
You can recruit
show. Okay, all right.
You can recruit. So that's no biggie. It's the teams. Like when Magic Johnson went on Jimmy Kimmel a couple of years ago and was pining for Kawhi Leonard. You can't do that.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Speaking of basketball, real quick before we get into football. Warriors had a fantastic win. Went to go Chase Center the other night to watch them beat the Milwaukee Bucks. Great game. 35-point win, which was a great rebound after losing by 50 to the Boston Celtics. And then they followed up with a stinker against the Chicago Bulls. But that's going to happen on back-to-backs. Not too concerned about the game itself. More concerning was Steph's injury. Always with the ankles. He turned his ankle. He left the game late in the fourth quarter. And I really don't know if that's the reason they lost the game. They weren't playing great to begin with. But MRI should be coming out today, I guess. That's what Monty Poole said. No updates right now. But Steve Kerr went on both stations yesterday, said the MRI came back clean, and we'll see what the timeline is. Shams and Woj both say that it doesn't seem like it's going to be a lengthy amount of time. But Monty Poole is saying it's very similar to Devin Booker's injury, where he missed 7 to 10 games. So we shall see.
Yeah. I love the Woj and Shams. They were in agreement on the Steph thing, but I love their different reporting for Karl Anthony Towns. How Shams is just right on it. It's a torn meniscus. He's going to be out indefinitely, whereas Wojnarowski tweets out a few minutes later, oh, he's actually just got a leg injury. They don't know the severity of it, so they're getting further testing to determine what the length of absence would be. And then later on, they said it's a torn meniscus. So it's like
love a good contradictory tweet.
Wars continues, man.
Yeah, they'll always fight it out for insider supremacy. But I don't know. I as far as Steph, are you that concerned? Because while it's not the best news, considering that they were at full strength for a little while, not the best timing. But then again, they're battling out for the play-in. I don't think he'll be gone for that long. But you should win these next 2 games against the Spurs, even if Wembanyama plays or doesn't play tonight and on Monday. Probably won't play tonight. Maybe plays Monday. We'll see about Steph, but it's not alarming, but it's not the best news.
Well, it'd be way more alarming if they had like the MRI's negative and he's reevaluated in 2 weeks' time. I just think that him being out kind of throws a wrench into these rotations that they've seemingly figured out. Like what they've got cooking right now with, Podziemski, Kuminga, Draymond, Wiggins, and Steph starting the game as the starting 5. Then you combine that with CP3 and Klay Thompson, and now a little more Trace Jackson Davis, a little more Moses Moody, all coming off the bench, along with GP2. I always seem to omit his name. It seems like they've got things clicking right now, and the fact that Steph could miss a couple of games, yeah, it's sort of alarming and disconcerting. But at the same time, I'm looking at these Western Conference standings, man, and with each game that goes by, like it seems so easy when the teams ranked 6 through 10 are within like 2.5 games of each
Yeah.
other. It's really that tight of a race. But like, God, each day is so different. It's like you need to go if you want to climb the standings, you basically gotta like win out on the season, or you gotta win like, you know, 15 of your next 20 or whatever. You can't just go, ho hum, yeah, we're gonna play 500 record basketball. So I think from that standpoint, I'm a little less concerned because they're probably going to be a playing team, and as long as they're healthy come postseason, then that's when I think that's when it's really mattering. So I think it's going to be a playing tournament for them. And really, like, what if the for whatever reason the Nuggets come in third and you get that 6th seed, then you have to face the Nuggets in the first round? I wouldn't want to do that. But then
No, I
again,
mean,
if you're the 7th or 8th seed, then you're likely having to face the Nuggets there too, which is not a place you want to be.
yeah, I mean, you want to avoid the Nuggets, and we'll talk about this as the playoffs approach. But I think what Warriors fans really are hoping for is they get one of the young teams in the first round if they get past the play-in. I mean, you never was, like you usually don't want to have the number one seed or the number one or the number two seed. But this year, if the T Wolves or the Thunder get it, then maybe you do with the lack of playoff experience,
Yeah.
especially with the injury to Karl Anthony Towns. But we shall see. I think both those teams right now are better than the Warriors. And really, while I was watching that Bulls game against the Warriors the other night, I was really more focused on Celtics Nuggets. Those are the two best teams in basketball. If that's not the finals, I think we'll all be disappointed. But things happen. You never know. And it's clear to me, while the Celtics have the best record in basketball, the Nuggets are by far the best team. So we shall see. But again, Warriors are playing better. I'm not expecting them to win the championship when it's all said and done. Could they make a
Yeah.
little playoff run? Yes. But eventually, when they do play the Nuggets, I think they'll lose.
When we and when we're talking about that game against the Bulls specifically, you kind of said that, it's I'm not sure if they lost because of no, they lost that game because DeMar DeRozan
Yes.
just continues to go. I guess I don't even know if he's an under the radar player anymore, but everyone forgets just how talented that dude is, and he's a bucket getter, a one-on-one bucket getter. DeRozan's always been that guy. Just because he hasn't won championships, he's always been a very, very skilled individual player. And I don't know, we got Kolsky coming up later. I don't know what the problem with the Bulls is or why they just can't seem to figure it out. I always thought they were going to be like one of the best teams in the NBA when Zach LaVine came through and they made that trade for Vucevic and everything. But I think at that point you just got to give the Bulls credit, man. They're a red hot team, and Steve Kerr was absolutely right when he said, or he had every right to be worried about that team. He said after the game, yeah, I was a little concerned because they were red hot going into that game, or at least DeMar DeRozan and Vucevic were, and then they ended up combining for 66 points. Just a tough outcome.
Now it's a tough outcome, but I don't think it's one that they need to be necessarily worried about.
Well, no,
I
but
mean, the more impressive thing was kicking the Bucks' ass like the way they did by 35 points, and then it's the NBA. When you have a back-to-back, sometimes you're going to just have a letdown against one of the lesser teams because they didn't prepare as well as they did for the Bucks. So I'm not that concerned. It's the Steph injury that's kind of alarming, but I think they'll be fine.
All right.
All right, before we get Kolsky in here, just some NFL news before we discuss. Really, we want to get to Kolsky about Justin Fields and the Bears and Caleb Williams because that thing it's pretty set in stone, I think. But we'll talk to Kolsky more about it. As far as news, we got one trade that went down today. Jerry Jeudy finally gets traded from the Broncos to the Browns for a fifth and a sixth. So then you got two kind of small, not small, but like really shifty, really good wide receivers, just not the toughest wide receivers, and Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy on the Browns. Just your quick thoughts on that trade, Stephen.
No, when I saw it, I just thought Judy had to get out of Denver. Like whatever Sean Payton's cooking up right now is a toxic workplace environment. I don't remember what their report card was and what it looked like. I think the Athletic put out the grade point averages from the NFLPA report cards, and I think I
want to say, sorry to cut you off, but I want to say it didn't reflect poorly on Sean Payton. I mean,
Okay.
Josh McDaniels definitely.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think people are looking too much into what happened with Russell Wilson. I mean, he just doesn't like the guy. But I think
Mm,
everything else, like he just wants to create a good football team. So
yeah.
as with John Gruden, as with a lot of arrogant coaches, when things are done, like before a coach gets there and they step in the door, they want to rework everything. Which,
Yeah.
you could be like, can't you just build upon this team? But he wants to remake the Broncos in his image. So I have no issue with that, and I think it's actually beneficial for the Browns. It's just now Deshaun Watson, like him or hate him, he's got to get his shit together, and they got to start performing and live up to that contract.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's a good move for the Browns. Like, I'm not just going to give up on one player because he's had a lackluster rookie contract. I'll say I'm not even going to say like a lackluster season. He's just been since he was drafted. Like, I remember Jerry Jeudy was that guy along with, Henry Ruggs and CeeDee Lamb, where you're like wondering if the Raiders are going to
Yeah.
take Jeudy that with that 12th overall pick, and they ended up taking Ruggs instead. By the way, we got like almost 30 people watching this, I think, combined with Twitter and YouTube and everything. So shout out to everyone who's joining us right
Yeah.
now. This is just your
It's
opinion,
it's
man.
all
If you
it's all
wanna
for Kolsky. It's all for Kolsky.
check us out on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, or X or whatever it's called. I mean, we're all over the
Nobody
place.
calls it X.
I have to.
You have to now in your reports.
Yes, because it's
Uh,
officially
you
called X. I'm not allowed to say their tweets or their posts now.
you have to say that now. KCBS makes you say that.
Yeah, it's official.
I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
At
I don't
first, I
like to
was
give
calling
in
it
to
formerly known
Elon,
as
but
Twitter for like the first 6 months, but now I call
that
it
is
X.
true. That's true. Okay. Before we bring in Kolsky here, latest with NFL news besides Judy, Russell Wilson officially released. Me and Alon talked about that last episode that you were out on. Um, he's making the rounds. He went to go visit the Giants, and he went to go visit the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I guess Russell Wilson's going to visit the Raiders come next week. Oh boy. As far as that situation with Pittsburgh, I think that right now the team that's probably talking to the Bears the most when it comes to Justin Fields are the Pittsburgh Steelers. So now they have a backup plan if things don't come to fruition with the trade, so they can rely on Russell Wilson maybe. It's just a lot of weird QB carousel stuff. Kirk Cousins, I guess, is in the mix to go join the Falcons and leave the Vikings. So the teams that basically need a quarterback are the Vikings, Raiders, and Steelers.
Yep.
And the whole time Ryan Poles was going to say if we are going to trade Justin Fields, it's going to be before free agency, and we got a couple days left before that. And I guess the latest is that the market they were hoping for Justin Fields is not come to fruition, which makes sense because no one knows where anyone's going yet. So maybe Justin Fields is somebody's last resort, especially if Kirk Cousins leaves. Would the Bears ever entertain a trade with the Vikings? I do not know about that, but it's going to be weird the next couple days, and I just think that, especially also with Caleb Williams declining to meet with the Bears before free agency, now that they're probably more inclined to wait, meet him, get the medical stuff, and then do the deal with Justin Fields. So I don't think this trade's going to happen as quickly as we thought, but eventually it is going to happen.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if, but when. I was still harping on the Russell Wilson thing. God, when I saw Russell Wilson linked with the Raiders and he's going to have a meeting, you know what I thought about? I thought about the movie Miracle. You seen that?
Of course.
Yeah, we watched it
You thought about
recently.
Kurt Russell instantly?
Instantly. Not
Okay.
even Kurt Russell though. I thought about the
Oh.
3 U.S. teammates. You remember? So it's in the middle of the movie, and they're just preparing like to go off to Lake Placid, and they are cutting down the roster. It's really tough because I think they're at like 26 players or something, and they got to get that roster down to 24. But in practice, when the guys aren't exactly showing out the way that Herb Brooks wanted them to, he brought in this guy from Minnesota. He's a good player, hell of a player, tough kid. He has the same mindset that I have. He's got the right attitude that I want for this team. And then the 3 players take Herb Brooks outside of the bus, and they're like, "You can't bring this guy onto the team. We've been with you for 6 months." And then like the guy in the middle says like the corniest line I've heard in a movie from Miracle when he goes, "You can't bring him in because we're a family.
Hmm.
We're a family." and this is the family you want to go to Lake Placid with. It kind of sounded like Gruden there.
Yeah, I'm about to say your Kurt Russell. I mean, it's good, but it's very Gruden-y.
It came out. It happened.
Yeah, I'll tell you what,
But
man.
point
Get
is,
Russell Wilson on a pair of skates.
But point is, I think that's how the Raiders would receive Russell Wilson should he actually, go on to the team or join the team.
Well, God forbid Max Crosby may, want to get traded if Russell Wilson's on the team.
I don't know. It does not seem like the right fit for me. So this is the team. So this is the team you want to go. God damn it! I can't do a Herb Brooks impression without doing a Gruden now. This sucks.
It's very similar. It's very similar.
It used to be one of my best ones.
I'm with you, Steven. I do not think that Russell Wilson will end up on the Raiders. I think the Raiders, we'll talk about it more, but definitely need to be in the market for a younger quarterback and probably trade up in the draft. But if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, that makes a lot of sense. And it also makes a lot of sense. I mean, Justin Fields kind of makes sense for the Steelers, but I don't know what the hell they're doing with Kenny Pickett. But let's talk about it more with one of our guests, or our only guest for today, actually. This guy used to work with me and Steven back in 95.7 The Game. You probably know him most from Damon, Ratto, and Kolsky back in the day. He used to be on with Tom Tolbert doing updates, and now he's back from time to time on KNBR with Tom Tolbert. Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Kolsky. What's going on, Kolsky?
Yeah.
Fellas, what's happening? I'm thrilled to be here. I hate how I look on camera.
Why?
Not just with you.
You look fine. You look fine.
Yeah. I want to relax in my chair and show off my shirt, but then I feel like, oh God. Anyway, I have so much to say about just the things I've heard in the last 5 minutes. Let's go. Do we swear?
But by all means, what do you want to talk about first and foremost from what you heard with us?
Do we swear on here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go. Let's go. All right. You know what? I know you guys want to talk to me about the Fields thing, so let's just do that first.
Okay.
Whoops, hold on. Go Bears. Bear down. Okay. I'm a little lost, and it's not you guys. It's the whole look. When we were talking about this a month ago, and people were like, "What do you want to do?" I would say, I really kind of like Justin Fields. I don't think he's going to have a great trade market, and all things being equal, you're probably a better team trading the pick, which would get you lots and lots of stuff, keeping Justin Fields versus taking a rookie. And now you get at best, a third rounder for Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm. Right.
However, this is where you got to trust the experts in terms of the guys scouting and the GM making the decision. Like, if you decide Caleb Williams is the guy you cannot pass up on, then I got to take your word for it. Like, I'm not in the room. Frankly, nobody is very good at knowing who is the right guy because, as we all know, CJ Stroud was the guy and he got picked second last year. So, like, philosophically, I want to say, F the pick, keep Fields, but I understand that you just can't be the GM who passes on Patrick Mahomes if that's what you think the guy is, right? So I get all that. And you may have noticed in that description, I apologize for jumping on the show and immediately monologuing for like 10 minutes, but in that description, I said I didn't think there'd be a good market for Fields because there never is. Like it's just the market's never what you want unless you're the top of the top quarterback. That being said, when I listen to you guys in this case, but anyone, because everyone's having this conversation and they go through these fucking teams, part of me is like, how could you not want Justin Fields? Because I watched this guy. Like, I know the stats are not great. I'm not here to tell you Justin Fields is a top 5 quarterback. Everybody in the league besides the Chiefs should want him. No. But are we really talking about Kenny Pickett versus Justin Fields? Are we really? I'm not even sure I want a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins off a knee injury over Justin Fields, while acknowledging that over the course of his career, Cousins has played at a level that Fields has never seen. Fair enough, but he's 36 coming off a knee injury. And if you're the Falcons, where are you going this season that you need the last good year or two of Kirk Cousins versus, like, If I'm the Falcons and I could trade a fourth or you know, a third and a fifth for Justin Fields, are we serious? Like, this guy is an NFL level playmaker, full stop.
Right.
Are there some things he needs to improve? Yes. He's a young quarterback. He's had terrible coaches. He's had mediocre offensive lines. It hasn't gone great. He holds the ball too long sometimes. He fumbles more than he should. But he's like already a middle of the pack quarterback with absolutely stunning playmaking talent. And that counts. Like, I know we want to say, well, all he does is run, but he does run. You get that for your team when he comes to your team. So, it's one thing if you've got the Jags or the Texans who have Stroud and what's his face? Lawrence coming up, right? It's if you're the Chargers but for fuck's sake, man, even some of these teams like Indianapolis or Cleveland, are you so sure about Deshaun Watson given everything that like Fields wouldn't be at least intriguing? Are you so positive about Anthony Richardson, who tremendous prospect, but looking pretty injury prone and has a total of 85 passes thrown in the NFL under his belt? Like, so to me, it's like I said, even if I'm some of those teams who feel like they have quarterbacks, I would be looking at this. Like, is Geno Smith so good in Seattle? Are you going somewhere with Geno Smith that you shouldn't take a chance on a younger guy? But if you're Atlanta, or, if it is Cousins to Atlanta, if you're Minnesota, if you're any of these teams, Pittsburgh, that have nothing, like nothing of value and frankly, I'm sorry, fellas, the Raiders, is Fields not a better prospect than Aiden O'Connell?
Absolutely he is.
Yes,
but
he is.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Here's my main question, because from where the Bears were at the start of this decade, I'll just take from 2020 when they had the position to get a quarterback and they took Fields. Like, this is not a team that's supposed to be in this position. You started with a new GM. You hired a new head coach both in the same year. And then Justin Fields looks like he's coming along, even though they only had a 3-14 season in 2022. And then last year, they end up with 7 wins, but they had that pick to trade up to number 1. But where did this, like, what sparked all of this? Where did it start? Like, where did the decline happen where it's like, okay, we actually have to rebuild our team to the point where we're trying to find a new franchise quarterback just 2 years later?
See, I don't think it is that. Look, Justin Fields is already a top 3, I think undeniably a top 3 Bears quarterback of my lifetime.
Wow.
I'm 42 years old. Now,
ahead of Rex Grossman?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, he's so much better than Rex Grossman ever
Jay
was.
Cutler?
He's one of the other top 3.
Okay.
And pick your third between like Kramer and Miller in the 90s probably, but it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's the Bears quarterback position is like one of the only things that's been terrible for like my whole life. In my entire sports world, the White Sox won a fucking World Series, but the Bears have never had a quarterback. Like, I don't remember Jim McMahon,
Yeah.
like my Bears memory basically starts post McMahon.
Harbaugh?
And Harbaugh and Kramer and Miller and 1,000 guys I could name that you would have never heard of, like Henry Burris and Moses Moreno and
Cordell Stewart.
Well, you've heard of him, but that was not a good time, And I was actually excited about that one because he was coming off doing some spectacular things, and it felt. Anyway, it didn't work.
So what you're saying is the Bears haven't found their version of Paul Konerko, Scott Pitzegnick, Mark Burley.
That's the guy. They have not found Mark Burley. And Mark Burley's a great name because Justin Fields can be your Mark Burley. He is not your Pedro Martinez.
Okay,
and I think it's pretty clear he's not Pedro.
Right.
He's not Mahomes. And there are things in his game that will never be elite at the Mahomes level. There are other things he does better. You know, he is a better runner than Patrick Mahomes. I mean, not that it doesn't do that much for you at the quarterback position, given how good Mahomes still is at that. So don't get me wrong. But like, I don't think we'll ever be having a reasonable conversation about whether Justin Fields is the best quarterback in the league. And I am usually of the opinion that if you don't have a guy who might enter that conversation, you should be looking for him. Now, as you pointed out, the opportunity to pick first overall is incredibly rare for a team with 7 wins. It's because of the trade last year.
Yeah.
So if you are of great conviction that Caleb Williams is that guy, I think you owe it to yourself as a general manager and to the franchise to take that guy.
Right.
However, if Justin Fields' price tag is a 3rd rounder or less, I think I would just keep them both.
Ooh.
Now, I don't know if this is something they're even considering, but the whole reason you want these guys, you know, beyond obviously the possibility of them becoming the best player in the league, is the cost control, right? And Justin Fields, although those decisions are coming up very soon, he's still cost controlled for now.
Yeah.
And although the first overall pick costs more than any other draft pick, still the price of Justin Fields' 4th year and Caleb Williams' 1st is a reasonable amount to spend on a quarterback room. We all know that even the best quarterback prospects are like what, a 60-40 proposition at best to hit, to really hit. I feel like Justin Fields, who we know can play a bit and can at least start the season if you want him to, if you plan to be a team that competes, which they have the cap room to become. If you're not going to get much for Fields, I know it's non-traditional. And the question is, could Matt Eberflus hold on to a locker room with both of those guys in it? And I don't know. We won't know that unless we try. But for whatever it's worth, and look, I don't look at Matt Eberflus and say born leader, but that seems to be his main quality.
Yeah.
Like, I get he coaches a good defense, but they had good defensive players. Like, that's great, but not super meaningful to me. So if keeping this guy after the career he's had as Bears head coach says to me, you believe in his leadership. And if he's a great leader, like, use those two guys to motivate each other. And if they're both great, they'll both play somewhere. I promise. If Justin Fields comes out and starts the year 4-1 and looks like a Pro Bowl level quarterback, and the Bears know Caleb Williams is ready and they think he's their guy, the price for Fields is going to be a lot higher than a 3rd round pick.
Okay, but given everything that's gone on with Caleb Williams,
hell yeah, that was a great answer, by the way.
No, I mean that's very interesting, and I know not a lot of people.
I think about it a lot, you guys.
Well,
Yeah,
no. See, this is why I wanted you to come on, because you and I were doing a show recently, and during the break, and through the IFB, I was talking to Kolsky about the quarterback situation with Chicago, and if we had to, like, you know, if that break was like 30 minutes, we could go on and talk about it.
Totally.
But we had to go back to the show. Yeah. So this is definitely why I wanted to bring you on. So you live in Chicago. Michael Wilbon is well known for
to be
Chicago.
specific, just in case there are Chicagoans watching. I live in Evanston.
Okay.
Which is, you know, on the border, but not technically Chicago. And I would never lie about that.
Well,
although,
fair enough.
you know, I'm close enough to rep Chicago.
Fair enough. We want to be accurate on the show. So Michael Wilbon, who's from Chicago, very, you know, talk Chicago sports all the time, knows it very well, recently said that the Fields Caleb Williams debate is probably the most talked about Chicago topic in sports history. Would you agree with that?
I'm not sure I know what he means by that. Does he mean the sports topic from Chicago that has been talked about by everyone else? Or does he mean within Chicago?
Within Chicago, the one that's debated the most between Chicago sports fans. There's people on the field side and there's people on the Caleb Williams side.
I think I can't think of anything
Really
that compares to it. Yeah, dude, it's Montana and Young, but
yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, like it's the fucking Chicago Bears, you guys. Like
Yeah.
it's George Halas. It's the foundation of football. Like we do this. And we've never had a real quarterback.
So
Since
then
Sid Luckman, we haven't had an elite quarterback. Even Jim McMahon, who was good, more reliable anyway, and for his time, probably better than any quarterback I've really seen. But not exactly Dan Marino. You know?
Yeah.
So like it's 100 years of history. And essentially since the forward pass, one of the founding teams in the sport has not had a quarterback who really matters. And that is upsetting, and it's deeply ingrained in the city's consciousness and handling of football. And so there are people, and although I'd like to think being in this business for 20 years has made me a little more reasonable, I kind of count myself among them, who are very attached to Justin Fields because he's done it right. He's been pretty darn good. He looks to be improving. He seems to care. He seems to be a good leader. The locker room, like he all the pieces are there to be by far the best quarterback of my lifetime. And I believe he is a good enough quarterback that if you do other things right, you can win a Super Bowl.
Okay. Real quick, Kolsky. Have you read up on Caleb Williams kind of off the field prior to this whole thing with the Bears?
Not aggressively. I know the reputation.
Okay, so does that concern you at all? And to your point you made earlier with playing both of them, we're being realistic. Do you think, given the high profile of Caleb Williams, that he would ever entertain something like that?
I love this. He's thinking about the answer.
You know what I'm thinking about? I'm just trying to decide if he has the actual power to do anything.
Well, he does in the way that
you mean become a part owner of the Bears?
Well, no, but I mean, we know what he could. We know the things he could do, and the question is really what he's willing to do. And
well, he's not giving out his medicals, which is something that's never been heard of before. The guy's got no agent, so while he seems arrogant,
but he's not on a team right now, and that's not going to stop him from being picked number 1 overall.
Yeah.
If the Bears pick him first overall and say, "Listen, we couldn't get a good value for Justin Fields, so we're not just going to throw him out the window. We love you. We think you're the quarterback of our future, but it's football. Shit happens. And our ideal situation is you're so fucking good that Justin Fields never starts another game for this team, but you're both here and we're going to have an open competition for the starting job, and let's see what you can do."
I'm all in on that now.
And if he
I'm all in on that now, the 2 quarterback thing, bring in Caleb Williams, let them duke it out. The first year quarterback coach, Kerry Joseph, I just looked that up. Just throw all the plans that he had this year, just
and
out
listen,
the window. I'm into it.
I'm glad you're with me, even if there's a hint of sarcasm in your voice.
No, play them at the same time. Put Justin Fields at running back. Let's do it.
Yeah, no. So listen, I understand all the emotional and practical challenges that this creates. I'm not an idiot. However, my feeling on especially like top QBs, top NBA draft picks, baseball's different, but my instinct is always the guys who really fail would fail anywhere, and the guys who are really the best would at least be really goddamn good anywhere. Does Patrick Mahomes benefit from coming in, learning for a year under like Alex Smith, who's, I think most would agree, a tremendous mentor, having Andy Reid as his coach, all that shit? Yeah, Of course he does. But my instinct is anywhere you sent him, he'd be great. And when you said the off the field stuff, the first guy I thought of was Patrick Mahomes. Do you remember, like, what are the last 5 off the field related Patrick Mahomes things? They all have to do with his family members making fools or criminals of themselves.
Yep.
Okay. Like, you just don't know. You don't know.
Right.
There was a time we argued whether Ryan Leaf should be drafted over Peyton Manning, and plenty of good football people sincerely believed that he should. You know, you don't know. And so, like, does Caleb Williams sound like a diva? I guess, but we have no idea the perspective that is coming from, who the sources are for various things. Like, are there people around him who might be a pain in the ass? Perhaps. None of it matters if he's an elite NFL quarterback. None of it.
Right.
Because I mean, Deshaun Watson isn't even an elite NFL quarterback anymore. And just on the off chance that he returned to form, look what the Browns gave him.
Right.
You know, it's one of the spots that an NBA superstar, I think, are the 2 most obvious spots in American sports anyway, where, like, if you're really that dude, nothing else matters. You'll deal with everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that goes for fans,
but
coaches, whoever.
it doesn't feel like Justin Fields has done that to separate himself, though. And that's probably why they're in the position that they're in.
He's
right?
not that guy.
Yeah.
He's not that guy. And I don't know that he ever will be, which is why if you
Right.
think Caleb's that guy, you kind of got to draft him. But what Fields is, I mean, Kirk Cousins is not that guy, right? But there have been times where it's like, if you do the things right, Brock Purdy's not that guy. But you can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. We know that. I mean, it's harder when Patrick Mahomes is on the other team, but they definitely could have won a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy if a couple things break different. So to me, Justin Fields can be good enough to be the Brock Purdy, Kirk Cousins level quarterback who is never going to be, argued for the best quarterback in the league, but is good enough to win and does all the little things and the off the field things right that you like. Because if you're not that guy, those things matter.
Right.
If you're that guy, those things don't matter as much.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then you got to do all the other things, right? So that's who Justin Fields can be to me. And, like, again, it's all relative because that would be the best quarterback of my life as a Bears fan.
So, as a Bears fan,
it's hard.
Let's say that Kirk Cousins goes to the Falcons.
Yeah. I heard this question too.
Let's say that Russell Wilson signs with the Steelers, and let's say the Raiders are just totally out on Justin Fields.
It's not great that I have trouble imagining Fields in a Vikings jersey without getting upset.
Would you entertain this?
I don't know if it would just hurt. It would just hurt so much if it went the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't go the wrong way, it has the potential to be intensely painful, right? Like Caleb Williams could be great, but if the Vikings build a slightly better team around Justin Fields, you could be losing to him for years anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's just in conference, okay. In division, it's so tough, man.
Yeah.
It's such a stark difference in the NFL to have to face those guys twice a year. I know because I've been playing the Packers Hall of Famers twice a year my whole life,
Right.
And fuck, even if we finally have a guy, it'll make it much easier to bear, but it's tough to imagine. And I'm, like I said, I'm maybe more attached to Fields than I am to most athletes I follow, but I'm usually able to be pretty dispassionate about this stuff. And I have trouble imagining that. So there's practical concerns and emotional concerns there. Also, if the Vikings are the one team offering, I know they won't, but let's, for the sake of argument, the 29th pick instead of a 4th rounder, then obviously, you know what I'm saying? But if the Vikings, if you're basically getting the Vikings offering, let's say, for sake of argument, Vikings are offering a 4th and a 6th, the Steelers are offering a 4th and a 5th. My instinct is keep him. you
Yeah.
know? But
Let's
even
say
if
they're
it's-
offering let's say they're offering a second, because it sounds like most teams are offering a 4th, which honestly, if you're Ryan Poles, like, that's disrespectful because Trey Lance went for a 4th and he played way less than Justin Fields.
and never showed anything. Didn't play enough
Exactly.
to show anything.
Okay, so let's say the Vikings are offering a second. Would you jump at that if that's the best offer that's on the table?
Ugh. If it's that much better than everything and you're determined to trade it, I don't know what else are you going to do, but that's why I would give serious consideration to keeping him for a second, though. Golly.
Yeah.
If it's like middle second or above, you probably got to do it.
Yeah.
Especially when you got to
do it.
build the team the way that you got to build it. Still, I mean, you got the quarterback, but you still need to build your roster moving forward. Like, that's the other part.
That's the thing. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
The roster's pretty good.
Yeah.
When healthy, it was a top 5 defense,
Yeah.
You probably want to bolster a couple of the things, but they re-signed Jalen Johnson, which is big.
Big time.
He had his best season last year when he was healthy. Another wide receiver wouldn't hurt, but I think the most important thing is probably one more of each offensive and defensive lineman. I think you can improve most of the positions on the offensive line, quite frankly, and you could use one more legit pass rusher. Montez Sweat was a huge surprise in a positive way.
Yeah.
But one more legit, I'm not saying it has to be Chris Jones, but they have money. So, and they have a whole draft finally, past they still have the 9th pick is, I think it is.
Yeah.
In addition to 1 overall. So like, this is this first pick is really just bonus equity. That's all it is from last year's trade. And I still, just because of the level of crapshoot that NFL quarterback is, right? If we give Caleb Williams a 60-40 chance of being like a good quarterback, but then he's just Justin Fields. What are the odds he's like a lot better than Fields? Maybe 30-40%? I think the odds he's worse are about 30-40%. So I won't be mad if they trade the pick. I just won't. I won't be mad until if he does become the next Patrick Mahomes, then of course you'll be upset.
Right. Yeah, I think that's just where like my first question kind of with the context that you just gave, I think that's where really my first question came out of, because it felt like to me they were in a position where kind of like the 2018 Niners, where they stunk. They found Jimmy Garoppolo from the last, whatever it was, five games. And then you win those 5 games, you rattle them off and you're feeling good, but you also have the number 2 overall pick in the draft. And you're just taking a defensive end, just a stud of a defensive end who changes everything with your defense. I just thought the Bears were in a position where they could probably get a lot of value from that number 1 overall pick because they're that comfortable with their quarterback, but they're not. And I guess that's just, I guess that's where my original question, like, where did this start? Is Justin Fields?
Well,
like,
I mean,
you talk about how he's a good leader, but is he like not that leader? I mean, I know last year there was a couple of weird situations with him and Luke Getsy, right?
He's not Mahomes or Rodgers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
It's like I don't think this is that different than if you go back to around the time that the Washington now Commanders were franchise tagging Cousins over and over again.
You're right.
You've got a guy who's good. He's good. He's not gonna be the best.
So he's
And
kind of
you're
like
about
a
to
victim,
have-
he's kind of like a victim of how we think about quarterbacks now. Then,
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And of how we pay quarterbacks, because you're about to have to make the decision of whether to give him the big fat second contract, which of course makes it harder. Like if Justin Fields is making $40 million right now, which is probably what he's going to cost, we're not having a conversation about how they can add a tackle and a pass rusher. And, then you have to hit on every draft pick or your team's not as good. In the same way that once the Niners started paying Jimmy Garoppolo significant amounts of money, and he wasn't elite, it became harder. But as soon as Brock Purdy's the quarterback and they don't have to pay Jimmy Garoppolo, all of a sudden they've got the highest paid defensive end and the highest paid linebacker and the highest paid tight end. And now Christian McCaffrey's here. And, that's the difference, right? And Justin Fields is right on that line, as Kirk Cousins was as a, 27, 28-year-old player, where he's good enough. You can win games. If you put together a really good team around him, you can even win a Super Bowl. But there's an argument, and I generally favor this argument, that you should never pay the guy unless he's the guy.
Yeah,
and there's only 4 or 5 of those at most at any given time. Like, who are they right now? It's Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. And maybe, of the young guys, like, it's still tough to decide, I think, right? Is Herbert?
It's tough.
I don't know.
You need another year of Purdy to do what he did so you can solidify him as one of those guys. I mean, it's one great year. He had a fantastic first full season, and obviously I guess year and a half is what I'll say, season and a half.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if he's that guy at this point. And he had an MVP type season.
Purdy will
right.
have an interesting contract, because a lot of people will say, well, it's Kyle's system. It's not necessarily his skill set. That will be, yeah.
Well, I think that favors. Well, but see, I don't know, because that's the other weird thing about this, right? Is if I look at this trade market, then I start to wonder if Justin Fields will even cost that much, right?
Right.
Like, I guess the problem is if he has a good enough season that you want to keep him, he does cost that much, right? So that's the trick. It's a really hard problem. It's a position that, I hate when people say that I don't envy, because I would love to be the Bears GM, but it's definitely a difficult decision, and it could cost you your job. So that part's tough. And I don't have a great answer, full stop, but I do think, like, the thing that never gets considered, which is just keeping them both, at least for now, because, like, what's the worst that can happen in that scenario? You have to trade Fields for a 5th instead of a 4th, because that.
Well, the worst case in that scenario would be they draft Caleb Williams, and the two guys publicly just totally badmouth the team and say this is ridiculous, and they're both there, and one of them wants to leave, one of them wants to stay. It just turns into a circus. That would be the worst case scenario.
You're right. I can say with great confidence, based on the way Fields has behaved as a professional, that he would not do that.
Well, when he's going on podcasts, unfollowing the team, that's pretty detrimental.
He unfollowed the whole league.
I know, I'm kidding.
Anyway, and honestly, that's like when people are doing stuff on social media, to me, it's like, that's just the kids are doing their thing. Like, I'm not. When he says what he says out loud at the podium, on the radio shows, when he does, that matters to me. Forget the social.
They need to utilize the mute button more. The mute button doesn't show anything.
Oh,
like,
mute's so good.
If you just unfollow, then you're just you're telling the world. But if you mute, I'm not going to tell anyone who I've muted, Derek. But it's like,
that's true. But honestly, can I say something? Even if he unfollowed the team, to be like, you know what, guys, fucking get a hold of this and decide what you're doing. It doesn't make me that upset.
Right.
Just like I wasn't that upset with the way Jonathan Kuminga handled himself, and I would argue, like, if he hadn't, the Warriors might not be where they're at right now.
Interesting.
Because didn't seem like anyone was going to make any decisions to include Jonathan Kuminga further without him saying something publicly.
Ooh, so we will definitely get into
that. Right. But that does bring us back to your point, Papa, earlier about what the power that Caleb Williams has in this scenario, right? It's possible that he would utilize his power, but fundamentally his only real power is, I refuse to play.
Yeah. Which he definitely could exercise. And
how much would it hurt his value?
If he pulled an Eli Manning or John Elway?
Not that much, I would argue.
I don't think so, because I think that he right now is up there with Andrew Luck as one of the biggest prospects of all time.
Right? So really, even if he did do that, like, I would argue, if you do that, I'm not that excited about your prospects as my team leader.
Of course.
Right.
So, in that scenario, and maybe I'm wrong to think this way, but I might just as well keep Justin Fields, who, again, I have confidence would not do that in the same scenario, and has just handled being the quarterback of the Bears, which is so fucking hard.
Yeah.
Because everyone we want it so bad, man.
Yeah.
People care so much about this team and so desperately want to have a quarterback. And it's people from age 5 to 95, and no one's ever really gotten it. And even just by being consistently better than average for 7 years, if that's what he ends up doing, Justin Fields would be the best Bears QB of my lifetime.
To answer your question, Stephen, why is this happening and why are they doing this? I think it's just because it fell in their lap, to be completely honest. I don't think that they were looking to get rid of Justin Fields. I think it's just because they passed on it last year and they didn't love Bryce Young and they were content on bringing back Justin Fields. And now this guy is just in a different class with Caleb Williams.
If the Chiefs had the number 1 overall pick for some weird reason, right? If they had made a trade that got them the number 1 overall pick. And so I use them to say, if the team was definitely trading it, I don't think the Bears would be in discussions to trade up for this pick.
No,
you know what I'm saying? I don't think this is something that they were looking for a new quarterback, but when you have the first overall pick and someone is talked about as being the sort of prospect Caleb Williams is, you got to look into it. Absolutely. Even if it's just to know how much you should demand in a trade.
All right. Last Bears question for me. You know him well because you watched him, and he may be I think I have a sense of what you're going to say here because you seem to be more on Justin Fields' side. How should Raider fans react to Luke Getsy as their offensive coordinator?
Bro, I'm sorry. It really sucks.
Yeah.
It does. I don't know what else to say to you.
Yeah.
It really fucking sucks.
Yep.
The guy was in a situation where he could do whatever he wanted. Matt Eberflus doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean that in the best way. He's a defensive coach. He empowered Luke Getsy to run the thing. And it was so badly designed.
Right.
And the play calling was so consistently poor. And look, I'll be honest, I have way less concept of what the Raiders roster is going to look like next season.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be that whatever the particular type of offense he wants to run actually is better suited for Aiden O'Connell and I don't know, is Hunter Renfrow still there? But
for now,
yeah, but he's not creative and he did not successfully design an offense around the talent he had, which I would argue was pretty fucking good. So it's a tough one. And Antonio Pierce seems like he could be the sort of guy that's a great head coach if he has really good coordinators.
Yes.
I think where my concern was after watching, good God, I forgot the name of the guy who does the quarterback school now, the old Niners quarterback. No,
JT O'Sullivan.
JT O'Sullivan, thank you.
Yeah.
When I watched his video on Fields, and it's not even just the boring play calling. It's not, the fact that it's not sequential and it was kind of random. It was also the lack of the organization around the offense that really got me. And some of those things that he pointed out, I'm like, yeah, that's on the coordinator. That's on the coach. Right. When these guys aren't communicating, when guys are, missing their assignments, sometimes it's on the player. But when it happens repeatedly over a course of a game, not even just a series, not even a season, over the course of a game, you're like, okay, what's the coordinator doing here? And I think that's my biggest concern. And I know that there's just this whole thing with his connection with Devontae Adams that he used to have when he was with Green Bay. But
how did that work out for Nathaniel Hackett in Denver? Right.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Though that's the worst reason to hire a guy. I know it happens all the time. And listen, I don't want to diminish who Antonio Pierce is, but I think that's one of the dangers of former players being coaches is like thinking about it as like it would have been cool to have a guy I liked as my coach,
Yeah.
instead of thinking about it like a CEO. And I think that's just a hard transition, even if you're going to be a great head coach. So I don't want to diminish Pierce, and hopefully maybe Getsy had learned something. I don't know. All I know is I'm glad you brought up JT O'Sullivan, because those videos are great and he's truly smart about this stuff. So it's not
He's
just
good at what he
me
does. Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
this, because like I assure you, I'm not JT O'Sullivan, and the fucking guy was terrible. And there were so many things that this sounds ridiculous. There are so many things that show up negatively in Justin Fields' statistics that were 198% created by the offensive coordinator, who was totally empowered by a head coach that doesn't focus on that side of the ball. So like, I just don't know how to defend that guy. I wish I could tell you something good about Luke Getsy. I cannot.
Well, we'll see.
He was the one guy that I was like, I can't watch if they bring that guy back.
Yeah.
So I was very happy to see him go.
Well, when I saw that they fired him, I thought that maybe they were going to keep Fields, but I guess they just wanted to revamp the whole offense, and now Shane Waldron's there as the play caller. Which
I don't think there was any defense for Luke Getsy, no matter what you were going to do at quarterback. I really don't. And I like the Shane Waldron hire. We'll see. It's always hard with these dudes. You only know so much.
Yeah.
But for me, the best trait in a coach is adaptability. Like, you got to be able to coach what you have. And if all you can coach is one specific system, it's not good. It's not good.
I agree. All right. Transitioning from Chicago Bears talk.
Yeah.
You are not in the Bay Area anymore, but you still watch a good amount of hoops and a lot of Warriors.
All of it. I'm locked in on Bay Area sports at the moment.
Let's do it. So
nice spring training hat, Steven.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. Please tell me you're not watching Giants A spring training there, Kolsky.
100% no. I'm not watching spring training baseball. Everything I need to know about spring training baseball, I can read the next day.
Thank you. That's what I think as well. So when you filled in with Tom Tolbert, you love watching the Warriors, and I feel like you do respect Steve Kerr. But one of my favorite things is when you
First of all, I love Steve Kerr.
I know you do.
I just not to take this to a place where none of us want to go, but like I'm like the people, the politics people who are like, it's not that I don't support him. It's important to criticize your candidate if you want them to be better. That's all it is.
No, I get it, and that's
it all
fair.
comes from a place of love.
No, I know, I get it. I know that you respect Steve, but what is it that you kind of question in his coaching when it comes to playing the young guys?
He doesn't want to coach young guys.
Yes. And you have a problem with the way he handled Kuminga and Moses Moody.
Yeah, but even I guess I feel like that overstates it. Okay. I just think it wasn't the best choice. It's not that I have I don't think Steve Kerr, to me, Steve Kerr is the perfect example of a coach who is, generally speaking, super adaptable and really listens to his players and does build what he does around the talent, but also around his core principles, and he loves to talk about this too. It's one of the things I love most about Steve Kerr. He holds a strongly convicted belief that like the ball has energy, and that, it's effectively belief in the basketball gods, and that honoring the game vis-a-vis moving the ball and men around the court at the most efficient possible way, like, will reward you in the long run. Right. And that's great. And I fully agree with him. But I think, and I'll say this too, I can always, to a degree, forgive any coach for simply trying to win, because that is the job after all.
Yep.
But I also think in Steve Kerr's case, particularly, he's he's not just a coach here. Steve Kerr is he is the Warriors. But seriously, he's a part of this organization, right? This is not James Borrego hired as the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, just trying to win enough games to keep his job.
Right.
This is a guy who's invested in the future of the franchise. So I think his decision making at times over the last 3 years could have better reflected the slightly longer term future of the franchise. And this is where I disagree with so many of the ardent Warrior fans who I love to talk to about this stuff on Twitter, who talk about wasting years of Curry and so on and so forth, right? Well, don't fundamentally, they got a title in the last 4 years, first of all, right? And in the years they didn't get the title, they didn't get anything.
Yeah.
But if they had utilized that time more aggressively to give guys like Kuminga and Moody, I'm not saying you do this in the finals when you've stumbled into a series with Boston, but during the course of that season, instead of the Anthony Lambs of the world, during the course of this season, instead of, Dario Saric never needed to play for this team. If now you need him when there's some injuries, but like, would you have lost more games if Trace Jackson Davis had been playing 15 minutes a night from night one?
Right.
I don't think so. Like, would you have been worse in some spots? Yeah. And better in others. And I think you'd be in about the same spot, which is like, okay. Right? Like the Warriors record right now is just okay.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of Dario Saric where there could have been Trace Jackson Davis. And how much better or more comfortable would Trace Jackson Davis be now? Now, listen, he's not the greatest example because everything you need him to do, he's already pretty good at, right? But if you apply that logic to every single fucking minute Anthony Lamb played, and don't get me started with the off the court stuff, because no one really knows what happens off the court, but it's not great with Anthony Lamb, and it doesn't make me feel great watching a team that I feel like is one of the few teams with any moral respectability.
Yeah.
Put a guy like that on the floor when it's totally unnecessary. And in fact, arguably, it was sacrifice development for Jonathan Kuminga. Now, answer this question. If Jonathan Kuminga had been playing the way he is playing today since the beginning of this season, I'm not saying he would have been this right away, but if he had played 5 times the minutes last season, which is what was available, during the Anthony Lamb disaster, what if he had been this since the beginning of the season? Then maybe the Warriors are a top 6 seed.
Yeah, most likely.
So I think those were mistakes. And same thing, as much as what's his face? Oh my God. The little white point guard from Virginia.
Oh, damn it.
On the team right now?
No, last year. The name Tyson Gay is in my head, but he's a sprinter.
That's the American sprinter. Hang on.
Yeah, that's the sprinter.
Hang
think
on.
it is Tyrone Jerome.
Oh, Ty Jerome.
Jerome.
Yeah.
Look, Tyson Gay wasn't that far off. Okay.
Forgot about the Ty Jerome.
Exactly.
Era.
But those could have been Moody minutes to a degree. I mean, I know he was playing point guard. It's not the perfect example, but like there were minutes available for Moody where Moody, in order to play those minutes, you would have had to let Moody make mistakes and stay in the game.
Right.
That's the cost.
Yeah.
Would you have been a slightly worse team at times? Perhaps. But again, I would argue you would have ended up in approximately the same place last year, which is effectively nowhere. So,
yeah.
And this is where, to me, the 2 timelines thing got all mucked up. It was the lack, and it's one of the only times that the organization has not been aligned. And frankly, I think it's one of the reasons Bob Myers is gone. That and Draymond.
Well,
But I think if Steve had been willing to lean into the 2 timelines, which meant sacrificing some of his principles, and I think that's where the problem takes root. I
But do
think
you
Steve
think it's
Kerr,
just Steve? Do you think it's just Steve? Don't you think Steph at that moment's like, hey, I'm trying to win still?
See, that's
yeah, but
that's
he
where
wanted Avery Bradley to win. You remember that?
Yeah. No, it's true.
You know you remember who they kept instead? Gary
Who was
Payton
it?
II.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Do you think they're better with Gary
Yeah.
Payton II?
For sure?
They
Yeah.
won a title that year, right?
Yeah.
You can't listen to Steph all the time. I
Well,
get it. You have to respect Steph, but the job then is to sell him on this being the right thing. Look, is he going to do everything Ty Jerome does right now? No. Is Kuminga going to make some mistakes that make you want to pull your fucking hair out, and Anthony Lamb isn't going to do that? Sure, but it's because Anthony Lamb is never going to be anything in this league ever. All he can do is be fundamentally sound.
Yeah.
He's never going to be anything in this league. And
Yeah.
you wasted a year of development potential to where now we'd be talking about, again, still in the prime of Steph Curry. So to me, they cut off their nose despite their face a little bit. Now, the good news is it doesn't seem to have negatively affected Moody's development at all. That kid is something else.
He's such a pro.
Oh my God. And
Yeah.
Kuminga has had this explosion now, but let's be honest. It took him raising a public stink, and then still after that, Andrew Wiggins had to get hurt for him to get minutes. And you can't
Draymond had to be
tell
suspended
me,
too.
right. And you can't tell me that just happened to happen at the perfect time that he was finally ready. No. If he had gotten the opportunity, he could have done this at least by the start of this year. And I don't think he had to be benched in a number of awkward and unfortunate situations to get to this point. I just don't believe that.
No,
I sound all fired up, and I'm not that fired up. I love Steve Kerr. Ultimately, the Warriors, I think, are still against all odds. One of the last, after Denver, I'm not sure there's any team I would less like to face in the Western Conference playoffs if they're fully healthy when we get there.
No, but I hear you. But you're 100% against. But you're 100 against Steve getting the contract. I hear you. I get it.
Yeah, they should have hired me. Again, I think Steve Kerr is arguably the best coach in the league.
Yeah.
So I don't. But just like the greatest baseball players of all time can't touch 400 batting average, like the best NBA head coaches of all time still make mistakes.
Yeah.
So, I think that, and to be fair, it's been a bit of a blind spot all along. The only reason Jordan Poole was allowed to develop, which, if we remember, meant being arguably the worst regular player in the entire league as a rookie, right?
Yeah.
And then going to the G League ultimately. But the only reason he got all those minutes, which ultimately led to at least a couple seasons of productive play as a Warrior, was because everybody got hurt and it was a mess. Steve doesn't like to play young players because young players often are not good at the things that he values.
Yes.
But I still like side with where Derek was kind of going with the Steph Curry thing, because I'm not gonna sit up here and tell you, I'd rather see Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome minutes as opposed to these two guys that you took 7 picks apart from the first round. I mean, I think you'd be crazy not to want that. But I think just from my standpoint is, I'm not saying Kerr's like totally immune from criticism of this decision, but I do think that based on what we know about the team, based on whether it's hearing Bob Myers or Joe Lacob, how they talk about everything they do, whether it's like drafting or free agency, what I've drawn from them is that it's collective. And whenever they're making these decisions, I mean, Steve Kerr's ultimately the number one guy to make this decision. He makes the final call, but I don't think that he would have made that decision had maybe guys like Curry or even Clay or Draymond kind of told you, like, I don't know if these guys on the court make us better right now. And I think that could be just to the fault of all those guys.
Yep.
Not just Curry.
I think you're right about the conversation, but you're still wrong about the responsibility.
Yeah.
Because to me, then the job becomes selling it to those guys.
Right.
You got to make them understand if you believe that's the best thing for the team. Now, ultimately, he didn't believe it was the best thing for the team, which is why he didn't do it, which is why we're here with me whining,
Yeah.
you know,
No, he should have
what's the
been the
word I'm
one.
looking for? Fruitlessly.
He should have been the
But
one that to go to the players and be like, "Look, you guys sound like you're jealous of these younger guys right now. If they're going to take away from whatever you want to do, like I could see
no, I
Clay being
mean,
that way. Like Clay would. I think Clay had a really hard time kind of accepting that he's going to be the number 3rd or 4th scoring option because Kuminga is. I know he can't shoot the 3, but just as far as what he could do in a variety of ways around the rim, he might be a better option. And I think they had a hard time accepting that.
yeah, but what did Steve Kerr do? He put him on the
Yeah.
fucking bench, had a
Yeah.
tough talk, and said,
Yeah.
"Shape up."
Eventually,
You know?
it happened.
Now,
Maybe
I don't
maybe it happened a
think
little too late.
maybe, but I don't think that. I don't know that it did happen too late. I think we're forgetting how good Clay was last year.
Yeah.
At least at times. Like so you know,
Not
and
in the
and
Lakers
how
series.
no, but also how slowly he started in a handful of years, right? So
Right.
like I think there was reasonable faith that he would turn it around from an offensive perspective. Like, look, everyone knows the Clay of 2018 is gone, and it's a shame the way it happened. But that dude's gone, and even Clay knows that. But ultimately, you know, still within a couple months, you put him on the bench, and I'm fairly sure, and this goes a little bit beyond just suspicion, that like, you know, the conversations we hear about of like me and Steve had a really good talk don't always start off or exist entirely in a really happy, friendly place.
No,
You know,
Right.
so
Well, they say that to the media or publicly just so
right,
they make you think you
exactly.
had a really good talk.
That's you don't talk about it, but like some of those talks are tough ones, and
Yeah.
I think probably the day that Bob and Steve sat in the office with Dre and Steph and Clay together and said, "Listen, thank you for coming in and advocating for Avery Bradley. We understand your perspective. He's a veteran with bona fides in this league. We really feel like Gary Payton II gives us a better chance to win a championship. And fundamentally, he has this skill X, Y, and Z, right? That may have been unpleasant at the beginning as well.
Right.
And I guess that's where I come from. And who knows? Like, we'll never know if I'm right. But it is my belief that if they had been willing to have if it is in fact true, and it is a totally reasonable explanation, that Stephen Curry was as much behind not playing more of the young guys sooner as Steve Kerr, that's believable. And I don't have a problem with Steph for handling it that way, but that's why he's not the player coach. And that's why player coaches aren't around that much anymore. And oftentimes, when the only guy who really in this NBA has had the opportunity to choose his own coach has been allowed to do so, it hasn't always worked.
No.
Right.
It's worked less often than it's failed.
No, it never works for LeBron. The only times
That's
he's really won is when Spoelstra was already there, which I'm sure he wasn't crazy about to begin with, and then coming back 3-1 against the Warriors. But
I will say Ty Lue is a great coach, so he was right about Ty Lue.
He's better, but would you say he's better? I mean, both of those guys, Spoelstra and Ty Lue, are better now than where they were with LeBron.
Yeah, but Ty Lue was a guy LeBron advocated for who has turned out overall to be a pretty excellent head coach.
I agree.
That said, the hit rate for players making general management and coaching decisions in my lifetime, what I've seen, has been very, very low.
Yes.
And a lot of times getting guys to either live with what you've decided or play with someone they weren't initially excited about is the thing that leads to the championship. Like that story happens a lot. So, that I'm not saying more Kuminga last year is the difference between a title this year and not, because I'm not sure anybody's beating Denver or Boston, but I do think they'd be in a better spot today. And I think part of the problem here was in both directions. Nobody expected Steph to be this good this long. On both sides of this, right? Because part of the reason you're preparing for the future is you don't expect him to be this good for this long. But also part of the reason, the other side of the argument was in a hurry to get veteran players 2 years ago is because they didn't think he'd be this good for this long.
Right.
Because, 3 years of 19-year-olds is enough time to get them ready to play in playoff games. And Steph is still Steph. And it looks like, I think we've seen, broadly speaking, decline for the first time this year. And that decline has been represented by probably like 5% more nights where he just doesn't have it from a shooting standpoint. But he has gotten so good at providing value in other ways, man. So fucking good at it.
Yeah.
Like even some of his best seasons when he was 26, 27, he's so much savvier an operator with the ball. He's even smarter about conserving his energy and the way he moves around the floor. He's even smarter about passing out of double teams and utilizing his gravity. So, golly, there is.
Well, he's stronger. He's stronger too. Like much stronger than he was pre-30s. Like after he hit 31, 32, that's when he started getting in the weight room and bulking up a little bit so that he could drive to the rack without. Yeah.
You're right. And man, he's so awesome. And I expect him to be similarly awesome for at least 2 or 3 more years after this. I really do.
Yep. Kolsky, I wanted to ask you about, he's not playing too much anymore because now you're seeing Trace Jackson-Davis and Kuminga kind of playing more in his spot. But Kevon Looney is one guy that I just wanted to get your opinion on just your opinion, man. What's the experience been like for you just watching this? Because I know that you were Kevon Looney sort of a stan of sorts in a way. Because I remember when we were doing the 5 a.m. show and I was producing, you asked me to grab this Iguodala sound talking about Looney's positioning on the floor and how he's a very heady player and understands where to be at all times. And you spoke for a straight hour using this one clip on Kevon Looney's position on the court. So I know you love Looney as much as anyone. God. What's the experience been like for you, though, where Kevon Looney is or was from that point on to where he is now? Because to be honest, I sometimes get sad seeing him on the court nowadays.
Well, first, thank you, because I have been asking the question, why don't I have a full-time job? Why don't people want to listen to me more? And I think you just answered it. In all seriousness, I do love Kevon Looney, and it is because I always love across the board in anything, music or books or things that I feel like are underappreciated broadly. I love, and I really hate things that I think are overappreciated. That's just who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So that breeds a love for Kevon Looney because he really is the quintessential it's not in the box score guy.
Yeah.
He just if it's almost a litmus test for like, you don't even have to be a basketball expert. It's just like, are you aware enough about basketball to care about something beyond the obvious, right? Because Kevon Looney does almost nothing obvious. You could give him the best possible situation to do something obvious, and he still usually doesn't do it. Like, somehow, if Kevon Looney has a breakaway and no one is within 10 feet of him, he is going to end up pump faking 6 times and having to do a reverse layup to get around a taller defender, right? But every little thing you care about as a basketball teammate, Kevon Looney does.
Yeah.
Then that all the way down to you literally probably, unless you work in the industry, don't know what the man's voice sounds like, because he never says anything particularly interesting, because all he cares about is doing whatever he can to help the team win a basketball game.
Yep.
And this dude coming out of high school was like Paolo Banchero, for fuck's sake. He was
a stud.
And his hips went as a 19-year-old. And so like he lost his ability to move. And that's why, he's a 6'9" center, basically, which is a really hard thing to do in today's NBA. especially if you don't shoot, right? I mean, if you think about 6'9" centers around the league, they're mostly guys who could stretch the floor. Kevon Looney doesn't stretch the floor, although he can knock down that Tim Duncan bank shot if you want him to. But all he does is set screens and box out. And he's the sort of dude, and maybe this is the best way to describe Kevon Looney. He's the sort of dude that cares more about the box out than the rebound.
No, I get that. Long
All
rebound connoisseur.
He does his job.
Yeah.
That's what Kevon Looney does every night. He comes out and does his fucking job. And he has done his job in some of the most critical moments in the NBA, full stop, in the last decade.
Yeah.
Like in situations where the Warriors needed someone to do a job that, frankly, they have not had someone who is equipped to do.
Yeah.
Every time they've needed to defend a legitimate post presence in this entire run.
Yeah.
Well, let's ask Kevon. I mean, look, Draymond's great, but they have needed Kevon Looney to get the job done so many times, and he always does it.
Mm-hmm.
No, and he's always been the unsung hero for the championships. I didn't think he was going to come back when they got DeMarcus Cousins, but he was willing to, come back and be the bench guy for that. So, or
Kevon Looney 100% could have made more money in his career by leaving the Warriors.
Absolutely, he could have.
100%. But he always felt like this was his best chance to win, and so he stayed. And frankly, like Kevon Looney should never be poor again in his life if he ever has been. He's made plenty of money for any normal human, but he has made very little money by NBA standards. So, like, you would not have faulted him at some point after winning 3 titles, for instance, to be like, you know what? This was great. This is the one time I'm going to be able to sign a contract for $50 million. I'm going to do it. But, he liked it here. There.
Yeah. No, we'll always remember Kevon Looney. I mean, really, the 2022 finals or the playoff run, really, where he stepped up, and that's how I always remember him. Maybe this is the last time.
He crushed the Celtics.
He was amazing.
Side.
20 rebounds against, I think, the Mavericks, whoever it was. It was amazing.
The Grizzlies. I remember that from the Grizzlies game 7, I think, or game 6 or game 7. There's 22 rebounds. Oh,
yep.
Yeah, no, incredible. Transitioning from sports real quick, Kolsky, we know that you've been watching a lot of the Oscar movies.
Dude.
And the Academy Awards are tomorrow. I've been looking over the list. I mean, Oppenheimer is the favorite, I guess, which was a great movie.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's the best movie of the year. What's your take on all the Oscar movies? The Oscars.
What do you think is the best movie of the year? Did you see them all? I saw 9 of 10.
Wow. Okay. Well, my favorite movie of the year was not even nominated. Have you seen the movie Blackberry?
No, but I've heard incredible things.
I thought it was
watch
great.
that.
I thought it was great.
That. You're not the first person to say to me that should be nominated for Best Picture, and I would have no problem with the removal of a couple of the ones that are in there.
Not only that, I thought that I think that Robert Downey Jr. did a great job in Oppenheimer, but I think the best performance of the year that follows under the category of Best Supporting Actor was Glenn Howerton. What's his character's name on Dennis on Sunny in Philadelphia. He fucking killed it in Blackberry, which is a movie about how Blackberries were invented. It's basically Goodfellas meets The Social Network. It is amazing.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to have to watch that. I made a specific effort over the last few weeks to watch Oscar movies, which is how I got to 9 out of 10. I got really close to 10. Like I have the time, I have the Apple TV Plus open to the zone of interest, and I just couldn't press the $19.99 button to watch The Nazi's Garden.
Yeah.
I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
That's fair.
So that's the only one I haven't seen. And honestly, I'm prepared to grant the people who say it's great. If they want to say that, that's fine. Although I struggle to believe that. Like, I'll even grant you that. I still don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
I think there are a few worthy candidates, honestly. Oppenheimer was great. I thought it was great. Barbie was great. I know American Fiction has gotten some flack. Like, maybe I'm just a white simpleton. It's totally possible, but I liked it. I thought it
got flack.
Yeah. What's the flack? Because I've only heard good things about it. I actually don't know what it's about, but I've seen the trailer and whatnot.
It's about a writer, Michael. He talks like this a lot of the time.
Primarily,
I do love that guy's voice.
I think primarily the flack is that it's a relatively mainstream movie with some pretty basic cultural critiques around race.
Okay.
And the book was like maybe I'm going to overstate this, and I have not read the book, but this is my understanding from the people who have criticized the movie in this way. The book was like a wildly creative, revolutionary tour de force about race in America. And I think people are disappointed that the movie is effectively a milquetoast version of the book. And I guess what I would say to you is that, like, it beats the alternative, which is nothing. Because you're like, if you want a movie to be widely distributed, like, you're not going to do it with, an avant-garde revolutionary film about race. Like,
right.
If you make that, it might be better, but 25 people will see it in an art house cinema and we won't be having this conversation. So like, I get the criticism, but I thought overall it was a well-made, well-acted, funny at times, and also, like, if not super creative, super salient in the cultural critiques that it's making. They're relatively straightforward things about race, I suppose, but they're not wrong. So I liked it.
Okay.
But again, like, I don't know. Some of that is not for me to decide. That's a much longer conversation. I wouldn't be mad if it won. I would not be mad if Oppenheimer or Barbie won. I wouldn't be mad if Poor Things won, but I would understand why other people were mad. Did either of you guys see Poor Things?
Now, Steven has seen it. Graphic, I've heard.
A lot of sex.
It's yeah, I mean, somebody said to me that, they felt it could effectively be described as baby-brained Emma Stone fucking a lot.
Right.
And that does extremely accurately describe a large portion of the film. But there's a lot more to it than that, ultimately. It is weird, but not necessarily as totally weird as some of the director's other stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And again, like, very strange.
Didn't he make The Lobster?
He did, yes.
Haven't seen that, but I always wanted to see that movie.
And The Favorite with a O-U, not an O. O-U.
Yes, The Favorite, which I think is although it's less, like, fantastical, I think it's weirder than Poor Things. Did you see The Favorite too?
Yeah.
That's fucking weird, right? I mean,
yeah, all of them are. They're all very weird. Unique. You think it's one thing, and then it turns out to be another.
Right, but I thought Poor Things was really funny and really kind of a delight to watch. And also, again, like, I don't know, big movies, I'm not really looking for, like, deep philosophy, but so many of these movies, whether it's Poor Things or Barbie or Oppenheimer or American Fiction, like, they have something to say, which is nice. They all have a point about them and some thematic oomph behind them. And I don't know, I can't really remember the last time there were 5 or 6 movies where I was like, yeah, I'd be happy if any of those won Best Picture. Usually it's like there's 5 movies, there are 10 movies in this category, and 8 of them are going to piss me off if they win.
Yeah, probably. Isn't Poor Things on, like, Disney Plus now?
I think it just came on Hulu. But if you have the bundle, then
it can not go on Disney Plus.
Well, no, that's but that's the funny thing is that it's so graphic because Fox owns, or Disney owns Fox now.
It's because of the bundle thing, right? If you bundle them together, then your Disney Plus will occasionally be like, you can watch this since you have the Hulu bundle. So,
and I'm sure a bunch of kids are gonna be watching that movie now. So enjoy.
Well, I mean, that's on parents, As a parent,
definitely.
I can now say, like, if you aren't stopping your kids from watching the shit, that's your fault. Don't blame Disney. Because, like, Fargo's on Hulu too. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
it's not just honestly, compared to a lot of the things on Hulu, Poor Things, like, they can handle a little bit of sex. It's better than some of the shit they'd bump into strolling around Hulu.
No, fair enough. Did
no,
you?
I think
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
It is a
I'd
lot of sex though, and some pretty weird sex.
well, I'd have to
heard.
say that that Poor Things was probably like my favorite movie theater experience that I've had in a while because
Yeah.
I think like the rest, everyone else, like I think they kind of had some trepidation about laughing because they didn't know what the director was going for.
So it's
there were
just
these,
you
but there was
laughing
these
loudly.
there were these two women.
I can see that.
There were these two women. Nah, dude, that's me in like Toy Story movies. Like when Buzz Lightyear starts doing funny shit in the theater, that's when I start
doing your laugh.
But two people in the front, and like they were this pair of women. I guess they were just like, you know, getting away from the families, going out to, as you know, just as moms, I think, and had a bottle of wine each, or a small mini bottle of wine each, and they're just busting up laughing. And I think that kind of allowed everyone else in the theater to start laughing and start looking at it a different way. So even though some of those sex scenes are like, what the hell is going on right now?
It
I
is
did not
funny.
need to
I
see
think
this
it's
hairy
intended
ass.
to be funny, right? Like
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And you know, it's hard to be sure with a director like that, right? You're never entirely sure, and he rarely will tell you whether you're supposed to be laughing or not. But that is a comedy. I'm fairly certain that film is a comedy.
Like when Willem Dafoe blew out the bubble, like just out of nowhere, everyone is silent at first, and then he burps out the bubble, and the two people in front,
it's gotta be. You can't. Nobody could be doing that without at least a tongue firmly planted in their cheek. Like that shit's funny. And I think there is some cognitive dissonance that happens when such stupidly funny stuff happens in a movie that is ostensibly so like high art, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that's part of the appeal of Yorgos Lanthimos. I mean, it certainly, The Favorite had elements of that as well, that like ostensibly this is a fine film about royalty, but like these women are just ridiculously attacking each other, and now they're covered in mud. It's so I think part of what he does is take real emotion that leads to real bad behavior that is often subtle and make it as extreme and ridiculous as possible.
Yep.
You know, and I go for that. I know a lot of people are turned off by how nonsensical some of it is, but like I listen to the band Fish. Like I like silly shit. And if you can find a way to make an interesting point to me using silly shit, which I think in a broader, more mainstream way is what Barbie did, I'm really into that. And I love Barbie too.
And somehow his movies just end up resulting in a statuette being held up on stage for Best Actress, because Olivia Colman won it for The Favorite, right?
You're right.
And now Emma Stone likely going to win
good
it
for
this
Emma.
one.
Okay, no, is she the favorite? Because I also saw that Lily Gladstone, who was in Killers of the Flower Moon, is the favorite for Best Actress.
Oh, is she? Did you look that up just now?
I did. I'm looking up a Variety, and
I think that's changed. If that's true, I think that's
okay. Has it changed?
I would bet that there is some sort of rumor or something, because I don't think she was favored to win. I do think I would give it to her.
Emma Stone or Lily Gladstone?
Lily Gladstone.
Okay, but I watched the movie. Great movie. But I would say the category's wrong for her. I think it's more supporting actress, because you can't tell me that DiCaprio and De Niro aren't more the leads in that movie.
They are, but she's the leadinest female, and I don't know.
Yeah,
it doesn't always make sense in those categories. You're probably right. I don't think it would be a great look for Scorsese if she had ended up as a supporting actress, just from the standpoint of like she should be the main fucking character of this fucking movie, you dickhead.
That's the problem people have with the movie, is that I think it's a great movie, but I think a lot of people are like, how come it's told from the perspective of the white guys that are murdering everybody?
Because it's not interesting the other way.
Exactly. That's the truth.
Which, yeah, if it's the other way, you're just being assaulted.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It's also not how the book went.
Right.
No, but that's why Scorsese.
It's also not Scorsese's story to tell. Then you know what I mean. In a much more dramatic way, it's not his story to tell. Like, he did a good job, I think, of involving the Osage in the production of this.
Yes.
To tell the story properly. But if it if it's really supposed to be from a native perspective, then I don't think that's a movie he can really make.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and that's usually his style, where it's always going to be the antagonist side of things. Every
That's
movie
right.
he's done, it's
All his movies are bad people for the most part.
exactly. So I don't think there's anything wrong with him doing it.
And
I-
what he's interested in, I as a Catholic, I think, is the redemption stuff primarily.
Yes. But I mean, like, one critique I would have is it was a very long movie. Like, I saw it in theaters, Steven
little
saw it in
long.
theaters. I don't know if you saw it in theaters, Kolsky,
I
but
did not.
3 hours and what was it, 30 minutes? That's a long a long flick.
Again, as a parent, I had to watch in 2 sittings, so I
enough.
understand that criticism, and it is valid. I think it could have probably benefited from being a miniseries.
Probably.
But that's not what Martin Scorsese does. He makes 3.5-hour movies. That's just what he does now.
Fair enough.
And I would argue this was a lot better than the last 3.5-hour movie he made, so I'll take it.
Yes. Irishman was good, but not great. And just Pacino just doing his normal voice is not necessarily.
That was tough. De Niro being old but looking like a young person with technology was really tough to watch.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for me. I guess the pieces were in place, but it just didn't. It never came together for me.
Who would have thought the two guys would have had a child after that movie?
I know. Jesus.
You know?
Man. Famous people. But I will say, although it was long, arguably too long, I do think this movie really did work. And
I agree.
although it's valid to say that, like, it could have centered Molly, Lily Gladstone's character, more, I don't think this movie failed to honor the victim side of this story.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. Which some tend to do.
Yeah, that's historically been a very big problem.
Yeah.
Well, that was the big criticism of
for
Wolf of Wall Street.
White people.
Yeah,
but again, even it's like, I guess what I would say to those people primarily is, so Scorsese's not for you then. You know what I mean? And maybe examine what it is in yourself that allows you to love Mean Streets and Goodfellas, but somehow be offended by the Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know.
I think it's just because, like, people just want to see, like, they don't want people getting off scot-free and not to show the victims. But then again, like, that's not necessarily the most interesting part of a movie. If you want the documentary, go watch it. But, you know.
Yes, and I would argue, like, if you don't want to see people get off easy or scot-free in true stories, the place for you is the real world, where it's still happening and you could maybe do something about it, instead of the movies where that's just kind of what happened, more or less. You know, you can say, like, oh, but that's not exactly how it happened. Yeah, but sure, they took some creative license, but, like, if you're that concerned about the treatment of oppressed people, like, let me point to some currently being oppressed that you can put your efforts towards. That would be my retort to that crowd. Like, it's great when art can reflect that positivity, but it shouldn't have to. And if you're that worried about it, go do something.
Definitely. Steven, any more questions?
How are you? How's the family?
Oh, we're pretty good. Like, this was, I don't think you guys did it on purpose, but this was perfectly timed, because the situation in the house right now on an average Saturday is, like, right around noon, my wife has had enough and goes and lies down. Then at like 12:45, my daughter goes down for her legitimate nap. And then what I have is like 45 minutes to either fight or sort of attempt to cajole my nearly 5-year-old son into also taking a nap. Because if he doesn't, then daddy has to work all day, because daddy's only real job is taking care of these motherfuckers. So today was a good day. Liana was down. I was like, Griffin, we got a big night. There's a s'mores event this evening. So it's very exciting. I was like, we want to make sure we're excited and energized for s'mores. Like, I think maybe you should consider taking a nap. And he was like, I want to watch television. And I was like, what if we come up with a deal? And he was like, okay, if I can watch Bluey, then I'll take a nap. And I was like, okay, we can watch one Bluey if you take a nap. And he was like, okay, but you have to lie down with me. And I was like, all right, but I only have a limited amount of time. So like one Bluey, 15 minutes of me lying down, nap. And we shook on it, and he really held up his end of the bargain, man. There was definitely a chance that he was going to pop up at like the 45-minute mark and be like, I tried, I couldn't sleep.
Right.
But no, we really slid this into the perfect window. So good job by you.
Yeah.
Fantastic,
You could
man.
tell him like either you take a nap or I'm going to give you my take on Justin Fields and Caleb Williams and the Bears and what they're going to do with this #1 overall pick. All right.
If he had been here, you 100% would have heard, Daddy, calm down.
Oh, that would have been great. That would have been great.
Or like, stop yelling. What? Daddy, you're being too loud.
Before we get you out of here, Kolsky, just tell us a little bit about your podcast. You got the toy department, right?
If you liked any of my Oscar thoughts, that's the kind of shit you'll get on the toy department. Ultimately, it ends up mostly being about television because there is so much fucking TV. However, it is just really a broad pop culture podcast, and that is the most broad and general sense of pop culture, anything in the so-called toy department of life. So we mix some sports in, but mostly it's about TV and movies and music and big stories about famous people. And I do it with a man you may all remember, the great Derek Madden, longtime afternoon DJ on Live 105 and The Bone, and now he's like he like meets with your bosses now, Papa. That's his,
does he now?
Yeah, he's like he is a program director in Minneapolis, but he's also like somewhere in the rock hierarchy in the company. So
nice.
To make it sound cool, I'll ask you, what you been spinning lately? What's been your music of choice? What's been your album? What's been your artist? Who you hot on right now?
Damn, that was cool. That was cool.
Yeah,
Steve.
That's what the cool music people say. What you spinning?
That was cool. I listened to a lot of new music once.
Yeah.
But I gotta be totally honest. There's not, because you sent me, we were talking about like, anything I should specifically pay attention to. And you were like, I'll ask you what new hip hop you're listening to. This is embarrassing. I don't know if new hip hop is really for me anymore.
No, that's fair because I'm the same way where I listen to a lot of old shit and
it makes me sad.
Steven's the young buck that tries out the old stuff, but he doesn't like most of it.
I mean, I still listen to.
Is that accurate or no? Am I totally wrong?
That is very inaccurate. What are you talking about?
Well, how would you describe it then?
I listen to both. I listen to everything.
Yeah, but there's a lot of new shit you don't like.
There's a lot of new shit I don't like. Yeah, I mean, I'm.
I mean, there's always lots of new shit. Who is your favorite? Like, I don't want to say active because I guess whatever. Jay-Z still does a feature here and there, but like, who is your favorite under 30 hip hop act?
I don't know if I have one.
Under 30?
That's approximate. I mean, I don't really know most guys' ages.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think that takes out the most of the longtime vets of the industry.
I just think those guys
I have one.
I think those guys that rose to fame in the early 2010s, more so from like Top Dog Entertainment, from TDE, ranging from like Kendrick Lamar to Schoolboy Q to Isaiah Rashad. I still think those guys are killing it.
I have a lot of respect for Schoolboy and Isaiah Rashad. Can't say I've listened to a ton of them. Kendrick I love, but
but they're all over 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. And even if I said under 40, Kendrick has like ascended to a level where it's like you're going to get the one album every 3 to 5 years and you're going to be thrilled and then he's going to disappear again. He's not really in the industry almost.
Right.
Although I do see him when he comes to town, wherever I happen to be living. I've seen that guy 3 or 4 times live and he puts on a show. But I don't know. who's newer than I don't know that there's any rapper that has broken since Kendrick that has really jumped into my heavy rotation. And I don't know if that's a sign of age, because I do listen to most of the shit once. I really do. Like, look, I mean, there's some things I sort of quit with, but most significant hip hop releases, I'm going to give it a listen. And there's some dudes like, there's the like Conway the Machine, Benny the Butcher pairing that is at least interesting to me.
Yeah.
But so much of
Griselda.
the new, yeah, that's the thing. So much of it is just like grumbling and or hollering. And what I loved about hip hop as much as anything, well, I mean, it was two things. It was the beats and it was the cleverness. And I feel like the cleverness is gone and the beats are all emo R&B beats.
Yep.
Which have their time and place, but it gets a little old.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like,
yeah.
I miss hip hop that, well, I don't miss it because I still listen to it, but like what I like, and the reason I'm probably too old for whatever they're doing now is like, I want to bob my head and then be like, oh, damn, that was a sick fucking line. Like, that's what I really want more than anything. You know, like if you can be Kendrick Lamar and write a fucking opera that's also a hip hop album, that's also a brilliant cultural critique, that's great. But mostly, I just want to fucking bob my head and be like, God damn it, Biggie is clever.
Yeah.
That's why I really
holy shit, that's a clever thing to say.
That's why I really only wait around for Run the Jewels to come out with an album every 3 years.
Love Run the Jewels. But again, that to me is in the Kendrick zone, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not really part, although shout out Killer Mike, you know, he won the Grammys.
I think we are in the
got arrested.
TikTokification era of music where they literally hear 10 seconds of a song and that's all they know. Like, I think the one that was most popular last year was Steve Lacy, who came out with the song Bad Habits, really popular on TikTok. And Steve Lacy, if anyone's heard him before, he's part of the group The Internet, which is also from LA. And the Internet's awesome. Lacy. And Steve Lacy's awesome. And then but there was a video I saw where he was at a concert, and the only time the crowd got into it was when he played the specific little part from TikTok in Bad Habits. And then no one knew anything else from his catalog.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of that is very specific because Steve Lacy is just not that guy. Right. So, you know, people still get into every minute of the Taylor Swift show, I guess is what I'm saying. Steve Lacy is an indie artist, really. He's like a indie R&B, but in like almost an indie rock space. He's weird.
Yeah.
Those kids don't belong at a Steve Lacy concert, to me, is the issue there. Not that music has been TikTokified, although you're probably right. I just wonder if that's the sort of thing that bounces back, or if that, like, is that one of the like cultural waves of like attention span getting short, but then soon people will get sick of that and they'll start to lengthen out again in a weird way? Yeah. Or is it like a horrible asymptote of misery that it's probably using too big math words, but I don't know. I don't know what to think about that, because the instinct of the older generation is always to be like, everything's going to shit. But I don't believe that about most things.
Right.
Yeah. Other than the earth dying, maybe. I think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
Music. See, you do think that about music, but I don't think it's true. There's always been bad music. We just don't remember it.
Right.
It doesn't last.
I think it's gotten worse, though.
Yeah, maybe. But I guess what I'm saying is like, there's more. So there's always been more bad than good. There's more of all of it. So there's way more bad. And we have more access to more things. So we get so much bad shit. But, and also, by the way, the most popular thing of any given time has rarely been the most artistically sound. And I'm talking human history, right? Fucking Van Gogh is not appreciated in his time. Aristotle and Socrates are not appreciated in their time. You know what I mean? So, and like, I guarantee you, there were dudes selling better than Beethoven when he was alive making music, and we don't know who the fuck those guys are because their bad music didn't last.
That's what I want, is underground like competitors to Beethoven. the B-sides of Beethoven.
No, but that's my whole point is like
Yeah.
there's the occasions when it comes together. Some would argue that's what Taylor Swift is, right? That's certainly what like Mozart was, right? To use a classical music example. But like I think for most of history, most of the best artists have not really fully been appreciated, have not been anyway the most popular.
Right.
No, that's
Like
right.
the most popular things at any given time are not often the ones that last the longest.
True.
Yeah. Look at Tracy Chapman's song. Fast Car kind of just fell by the
That
wayside
That was
after.
super popular though.
Going back to Tracy
It was
Chapman.
incredibly popular, but then
Yeah.
like Tracy Chapman, since she stopped making music, kind of like fell off
Right.
a little bit. And then Luke Combs comes in, does a remake of it, or I guess literally just sang it word for word. And now it's
Yeah.
back to being popular again because people are appreciating it.
I've always
It's
loved
always
Tracy
like-
Chapman.
Yeah, I think that this was like the perfect amount of time
Yeah.
in terms of like that Grammy performance hit people who like did, and Luke Combs in general covering it hit people who don't remember it at all, or like weren't born,
Right.
and have no cultural concept of Tracy Chapman. Because yeah, if you were old enough to listen to the radio, that song, I hated that song because of how ubiquitous it was at the time.
Right.
Like not the song, but like I was pissed off at how many times I'd had to listen to Fast Car by by the time I was 13 or whatever.
Right.
But it's an incredible song, man. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's an
Oh.
unimpeachable song.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It was in when I was a kid. My mom was playing in the car countless times. So
Yeah,
love Tracy
yeah.
Chapman.
Rarely in a fast car. Funny thing about Fast Car, you
That
were
is
almost
true.
always driving slowly when you were listening to that song.
Well, it's an incredibly sad song. So
That's
yeah,
what
I
I'm
would
saying. Yeah. ah,
Kolsky,
boy.
we have taken way too much of your time, but thank you for hanging out with us. I'm glad we got into the right moment when your kids are asleep and your wife is asleep as well. So thank you
Yeah.
for joining us, and we were able to let you talk about Justin Fields, Oscars, and why you hate Steve Kerr.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, this is better for me than for you, I'm sure. So thank you. I very few people let me talk that much over the space of an hour and a half. Certainly nobody in this family is letting me talk that much in an hour and a half. So I appreciate you guys.
No problem, man. Thank you. You can catch Kolsky on his podcast, The Toy Department, and he's on KMBR from time to time. Thank
From
you.
time
Matt.
to time.
From time to time. Matt Kolsky, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you.
And thanks for the Christmas card that got here on Valentine's Day. Appreciate it.
Love you, Steven. I
Thanks,
should
man.
see. I knew I should have verified your address, but on the bright side, some stranger at your old address got a lovely card from me.
Yes, they did. And we loved it. We loved it, man. Thank you. All right. Now we do the awkward thing where you just kick them out. How do we do this? Kick them. Kick from the studio. Kick guest.
I love that terminology, the kicking.
The kick or ban. It's like I guess I'd kick them out rather than ban them.
Well, Steven, good Lord. Kolsky,
What?
love him as a guest, but does love to talk.
That man can preach.
I know. But out of all the interviews we've done, that was the one where I was like, do I get in now? Don't know. He's still
Right.
going.
Yeah.
But
no, he
love-
loves the
love-
pregnant pause.
He does. He learned well from Damon. But no, it was good to have him on because I'm glad we got to talk about Justin Fields and Caleb Williams because he's one of the few people that I know that's all about Justin Fields. Okay, we've been going for 2 hours now. So let me just real quick, Steven. Free agency happening on Monday. Tampering pairing started. What's one guy you really want for the Raiders? What's the priorities? Do you want Josh Jacobs back? I know there's so many questions to throw at you, but such a
God,
time.
I'd love I mean, of course I'd love them to sign Josh Jacobs again. I don't know what the price tag is though, and if I'm being honest, I haven't looked at too many prospects, but one free agent that I want, and really take your pick, but one of these safeties that just unceremoniously did not get a new
Yeah.
contract. Like if they can pick up a Jordan Poyer, who's just an absolute beast, or who is the other one that got let go? There was another prominent safety
Justin
that got
Simmons. So just
Justin
kind of
Simmons, too.
surprising all the defensive backs that got cut this past week. Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, who is, for my money has been one of the best corners in football, but from an ACL injury to a Achilles injury, it's hard to bring him back. Justin Simmons, as we said, Xavier Howard, that was the cornerback for the Dolphins, got released a couple weeks ago. Eagles cut Avonte Maddox. The Seahawks cut Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams, who's I think his days of being a safety are over.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, a lot of defensive backs available, and that's what I would have said with the Raiders. Probably they need a veteran corner. Xavier Howard, I think, would be a good fit with them. But as far as Josh Jacobs, it just depends on what the running back market's going to be. They could get by with Zamir White, but Josh Jacobs is one of the best running backs in football. It's just a matter
Totally.
of what they're willing to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one, and my brother brought this up last night, and I'd be in on it, is trying to sign Christian Wilkins.
That'd be big.
If they could pair him up alongside Max Crosby, you bring that attitude onto the defense that kind of he keeps things light, as Crosby's just trying to just destroy the quarterback. Wilkins is kind of like that joke maker. But I think he'd be a good fit for the Raiders. So bring on Christian Wilkins if they could sign him.
I don't think that's bad. I mean, shit, we'll see about Chris Jones because it sounds like the Chiefs are going to pay him, but if for whatever reason they can't get a deal done, I think, if the Raiders are going cheap quarterback-wise, if they're not going to trade for Justin Fields, if they're going to look for a rookie, why not go all in on the guy that's tormented the Raiders and bring in a guy like Chris Jones?
Yeah. No, that'd be, of course. Like, why would anyone say no to that? If they could do that, why would anyone say no?
Well, the cost, but yeah.
It's not my money. I mean, I'm willing to let them just spend whatever they want. Focusing on the player, yeah, I'd be very thrilled if they brought on one of the best defensive tackles we've seen in quite some time.
And I think as far as the Niners, I mean, I'm preparing for them to possibly cut Kyle Juszczyk or somebody in the next couple of days here because they need to get I think they're a little bit over the cap right now. They got to make some moves, as Mike Silver pointed out in the article. I don't know if they're going to trade anybody big, but we'll see what happens with Brandon Ayuk. I don't think that's going to happen quickly. Maybe a training camp thing, but I would expect them to cut, if I had to guess, maybe Kyle Juszczyk and save some money. And they need to go address the safety position because I don't know when Talanoa Hufanga is going to be healthy, and I don't think Deshaun Gibson's going to age well, and I don't think he's a guy they should bring back. I would sign, whatever safeties are available, maybe a Quandre Diggs, who's familiar with Nick Sorensen from Seattle. So I would go that route for the Niners. They need to address the safety position. They signed back Colton McKivitz, so maybe somebody in the interior of the offensive line, maybe a guard, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, they're bringing back John Feliciano and
they are too. Yeah, that's true.
And Aaron Banks too. I don't know who'd be their center. I think Feliciano could play center if he wanted to, but I think they're pretty short up there. And I mean, we mentioned that earlier when we kind of had our post Super Bowl, what are the Niners going to do next? And that was potentially get someone at safety. And I do think if you had to read the tea leaves, see what Mike Silver was talking about with that one very specific paragraph where it seems like he knew something about a player who's been really productive.
Yeah.
During those Super Bowl runs in 2019, there's only a handful of players that you could choose from there. And Kyle Juszczyk seems to be the easiest one to kind of get rid of. I know Deebo Samuel was like the number one name that entered my mind when I read that. It was like, ooh, like with the Brandon Ayuk stuff and understanding you can't pay everybody, but seems like Juszczyk is kind of a likely to be cut type player.
And you could get by without a fullback. I know he's the best fullback, and he's used more than just being a fullback, but with the money he makes, I think it makes sense.
God, that'd be. I don't.
I know.
When I see how that run game works, and I see that
he's a big part of it.
Like when I just see him and Kittle and Trent Williams all on the left side, and McCaffrey understanding where to run and just finding that hole and just bursting right through it. Like a lot of that's with Juszczyk. I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like, well, of course we'd love to keep him, but at the price tag, when something's got to give with the salary cap at some point.
Yeah.
So they're kind of stuck. But I think, I don't know if that offense is going to be like historically good next year without Juszczyk.
Well, we'll see.
Which is what they were. They were historically good.
Kolsky kind of brought it up where he asked if Hunter Renfro's still on the Raiders. He is. I would probably expect him to get traded, though. We'll see. Maybe cut even. But, don't think he's going to be on the team going forward. Real quick, what do you think of Jason Kelce's retirement?
Oh, I mean, it's Jason Kelce. I'm glad that he's getting the shine that he is because, like, this dude is just through and through, just a football guy, but loyal and lighthearted. Just like I don't know, his speech was just so emotional, like having to stop and cry for a solid 2 or 3 minutes just to compose himself. And look at what that means. But it's crazy, like how often have we seen that where a center gets a ceremonious exit that way? It's very rare, extremely rare.
It's very Philly. I loved it. It's probably one of my favorite retirement press conferences. It's very rare to he was crying for a good deal of it, but I just love the Nick Foles, the biggest dick on the team.
Yeah.
And Doug Peterson with the biggest balls, and just like crying while also trying to be funny. I just thought it worked really well. And
Jordan Mailata's 6'9" and Darren Sproles is 4'9".
But I look forward to whatever he's going to do next. I would assume he's going to be on Amazon Prime in some capacity, whether he's on the set, Richard Sherman with another DUI. We'll see. Or not another. I don't think whatever he was arrested for 2 years ago was an alcohol related.
It was alcohol related.
It was? Okay.
I think I'm pretty sure he was extremely drunk, just pounding on the door.
Okay. Then yikes. So we'll see about that. There's also stuff about Belichick possibly teaming up with Peyton Manning on Omaha Productions with Saban. We can say that for another day, but that's interesting if that were to come to fruition. Okay, real quick, Steven. Do you think I'll share them a screen here? I'll pull it up myself. Look at this. I can do this too.
Wow.
Do you think Draymond Green knows what Mazel Tov means?
That's a two. He was on the block.
How's the baby?
Good.
How old now?
Should turn 4 months tomorrow.
Mazel tov.
Mazel, baby.
Yeah, I think he does.
It is just kind of a slow pause. Just Mazel, man.
It's so endearing. I loved that video. I did.
No, it was good. It was a different Draymond where he wasn't as into the game. Like I think that's where therapy kind of helped him, where he's just like not crazy and just ample and just like a fan, just like, hey, how's your kid?
Yeah.
He's like,
or he's extremely normal when no one's pressing him to the point where he can go off at some point. Like I think that fan just showed what athletes are just people. They're humans. They got families, they got lives and all that sort of stuff. Like if you're sitting next to the bench and say Klay Thompson walks up, you're not going to talk about, hey, what does it feel like to sit here? No, you're going to ask him like,
how's the boat?
How's the boat? How's the maintenance? Like that sort of thing. Hey, how's the dog? How's Rocco? That sort of thing. You just ask them about themselves and they're going to treat you with kindness. I think just we always see like these people at their worst and never usually at their best. And I think we could just forget for a second, like, oh yeah, these are mostly just regular human beings who happen to have a hell of a lot of pressure placed upon them just because of the amount of money they're making and they're in a professional athletic league, whatever it is.
No, I mean, I thought it was nice, but it just made me laugh because Draymond was just like, Mazel, man. And it just reminded me of Along Came Polly with Alec Baldwin. Mazel, good things.
Mazel, good things.
All right. Before we get out of here, just real quick, I didn't say this last podcast. I just want to mention it. Haberman and Middlecoff, their podcast is coming to an end or has come to an end. They already released the last episode. I just want to say this podcast probably wouldn't exist without them. I used to listen to their podcast a lot when I moved to LA, and I was like, damn, this is fun. I actually think it's better than they did when they did a radio show. It was them uncensored and just talking about football. And when I listened to it, I was like, this is something I really want to do. And I'm sad they're not doing the podcast together anymore, but both of them are doing great things separately now. I still listen to Middlecoff's 3 and Out podcast, so just want to give them a shout out. If it wasn't for Haberman and Middlecoff, I worked with them back in the day, and I owe a lot to those guys. So without their podcast, this Just Your Opinion, man, wouldn't be a thing. So
you're saying their show was better when the only thing that wasn't the same going into the podcast was the guy producing it?
Yes. Guy Haberman was a better producer than me.
Okay, no. Shout
But
out to
the only thing
was-
that's missing in the podcast is the songs that your boy would come up with.
yeah. All right, fair enough. No, shout out to them, man. I mean, I promo code ham. I saw
Promo
that
code
all over-
ham.
I saw that all over my timeline, and that just shows the amount of reach that they had and how many people were truly listening to it and could give you just the real, I'd say, more objective sports talk as opposed to just being totally biased on one side or the other. So shout out to them, man. They had a great run.
They did. And we'll be back, continuing our run, coming up on Monday. So the fuckery is happening. We will be recapping it. We'll be back on Monday to go over the first day of legal tampering. And then we'll be back on Wednesday for the actual first day of the new league year. So we'll be back this week on Monday and Wednesday.
All right.
Get ready, Steve.
Sweet.
All right. And you ready for the Oscars tomorrow?
Yeah, I haven't watched many of them.
I thought
I'm-
you're like a big Oscar guy.
I'm excited for it. I'll be watching it, but I haven't watched that many. And shout out to
Oh, the movies you're saying?
yeah, and
Okay,
shout
gotcha.
out to Sean Wang. Hopefully he wins it for documentary short.
Oh yeah, your buddy.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
wouldn't call him a buddy. I just knew him from school. Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, this is my close friend. We talk all the time." No, I just sent him a few congratulatory messages. I don't know. It's wild seeing him do like all these interviews like everywhere across the nation, and he's all over like NBC and the Kelly Clarkson show and Good Morning America and all these different things. So it's pretty wild to see.
Did you text Robert Turbin to congratulate him being on NFL Network?
No,
Oh, I thought you guys were tight.
no, not really.
You went to the same high school.
He was there like 6 years before me. All right, that's a
Step
lie.
down
That's a
that-
lie. That's a lie. He was there 2 years before me. 2 years.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we'll be back later this week on Monday and Wednesday to go over the fuckery. Until then, thanks for everybody that joined us today, especially Matt Kolsky. Thanks for him for dropping in. Ernie's and AJ Cruz. I think Skills was here earlier. And we had a pretty good audience today. Not bad. Let's keep it up, people. Steven, say what you always say.
What do I always say? Just our opinion. Yeah,